webinars, webinars. Everywhere I go and everything I read, people say webinars, you should do webinars. But I'm going to hold up my hand and say that I haven't done any. And it's for the simple reason that I haven't known really where to start. I have to confess, I've found webinars overwhelming. And so I know they're so powerful. I know they can create both live stream and evergreen income, but I haven't known where to start, which is why I'm really, really pleased that I'm really pleased why Alex Veng reached out and offered to share his wisdom. He has a company called the Fearless Webinar Academy. He's joining us from Charlotte, North Carolina, and he's going to help us to overcome fear, but also learn how we can make a six-figure webinar. Doesn't that sound good? Alex, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Jim. Really excited to be here and looking forward to being another guest on your podcast. I understand you've been doing this since 2019, hundreds of podcast guests, so hopefully I can find a way to stand out.
You can stand out, and every guest is special. That's absolutely clear. Everyone has a unique story, and everyone is special. So I'm grateful for everyone that's willing to come and share. And as I said in my introduction, webinars for many of us seem a combination of public speaking, technology, live streaming, presentations, and data all wrapped into one. So it's going to be great because I think you're going to help us to understand how possible it is, give us some straightforward guidance, and also give us some resources that we can go to after this. So people do please stick around. You're going to love what Alex has got to say because he's done hundreds of webinars and has got already a book that he's writing on the topic. Alex, where should we start? Why don't we start with what role do webinars play in the marketing mix, regardless of what business you're in, whether you're a coach, whether you've got a business selling hardware, software? What role should webinars play for people in their marketing strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jim. I'll start off by saying this. Webinars are probably the best way to sell a digital product. They're interactive. It's an interactive, real-time experience. Okay, it's way better than a recorded video, whether that's on YouTube or on your website. It's better than a blog post, and people interact more. That's what people are desiring now. They really, really, really like the interaction. And also, as a guest or someone in the chat on your webinar, I can say something in the chat box and I can manipulate how that webinar is going. For example, I can ask the webinar host a question and they'll stop what they're doing and answer my question. So I feel like I have power as a webinar attendee. And when you empower your webinar attendees by having a Q&A session, something like that, this is a whole other, because let's be real, a webinar is a just very long sales presentation. And inside that sales presentation, you're going to insert some teaching moments. You're going to teach people stuff. You're going to show them that you are the expert. And then at the end, you can say, if you'd like to take this a step further, here's the logical next step. And so webinars are incredible for live interaction, because this live interaction, what it does is it builds trust. People get to see the real you, not just curated on social media. It's live. So every time you sneeze, okay, that's recorded and live right there on the webinar. And so it kind of brings more of a human aspect to it as well, I would say. But I think something I can't pass over when we're talking about webinars here and why they work, it's because they have the highest conversion rate of anything.
Is that right?
Right.
So higher than advertising, higher than direct mail, the webinar works.
Oh yeah.
And that's because of this interactivity. I suppose, as you say, you're live streaming. It's almost like a TV audience, but everybody's sitting in the chair opposite the anchor, opposite the host, right? And as you say, you can actually interact and ask questions, which is probably why it makes it so overwhelming as a potential webinar host, because you've got to think about the content and the platform and maybe the interactivity, the chat. And certainly I have stalled on my efforts. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you. What are the steps that we need to take, Alex, to put in place a strategy for webinars?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the steps that you need, so you're basically asking me, how do I set up a webinar? Well, the first thing is
Yeah.
you need an offer. You need something to sell. Best thing to sell in a webinar is going to be a digital product. So that is a course, coaching, newsletter, private podcast, anything that you protect that you can deliver digitally. When I say protect, I mean protect with a paywall, right? Anything that you sell digitally. Webinar is a great way to sell that. So first, you need an offer. Okay. Second thing you need is a way to do the webinar. So there's a lot of software out there that can do this for you. Webinar Jam is the tried and true. Everybody's heard of it. That's probably the best route to go. It's just Webinar Jam. So you're going to need, so once you have a way to do the webinar and something to sell, okay, you're also going to need a structure to your webinar, which we can get into. I have the exact framework or structure that you should do when you're doing a webinar. So we could talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do that. Let's go through the steps first before we go into the content in the specific section.
You're going to need a registration page. So you're going to need some sort of way to set up a website and then have a form on it with the name, email, phone number, very important, phone number. Okay. So we're going to have a page with a form, collect some information so that we can create a list, build our list of people who want to attend. We call those registrations. Now, there is a big difference between somebody who is a registrant and somebody who is an attendee. Huge difference. Somebody who registers just says, yeah, maybe I'll think about it. It sounds interesting. Okay. Your next job is to convince that registrant that coming to your webinar, spending an hour with you is going to be a worthwhile experience. And so that's why we have an automated email sequence so that every day they get an email pumping them up, getting them excited about that webinar, and hopefully getting them to put it on their calendar. Because if you can portray that your webinar is a priority to your audience, they will show up. So I did a video about this on my YouTube channel, talking about how the average webinar attendance rate, or I guess the show up rate, I should say, is anywhere from 30 to 40%. And that, to me, is unacceptable, because if 40% of people show up to your webinar, what does that mean? Right? That means that 60% of people, if my math is right, decided not to come. So why are we getting excited about a 40% show up rate when 60% of the people who said they would attend didn't? So I did a whole video on this. I think an 80% show up rate is what you should be shooting for. And the way to do that is by sending, here's my secret. And by the way, today on this show, I'm going to be giving away all my secrets. And that's because with my business, I don't gatekeep anything. I give away the entire farm. I say, here's how to do everything. Here are ChatGPT prompts to do everything and have it written for you, or at least to help you get started. And then if you need it, I'll do coaching. But I just want to empower people to do these webinars. So back to what I was saying, the way I get people, the way I turn my registrants into attendees is I send a minimum of 6 emails and 3 text messages. So that is the key. That is a formula right there.
Okay, and Alex, just to stop you there, couple of questions. I will come back to the messaging frequency, and that you're using omnichannel, that you're using email and you're using text, because I'm a big believer in the use of text messages as well. But just, have we done all the steps? Yeah.
Well, I guess so the answer to that is going to be no. And the reason for that is you're going to need an audience. So you need an already existing audience in order to say, hey, and raise your hand and say, hey, I'm doing a webinar. All right. So you're going to need a very interesting topic to teach. You have to understand your audience, right? What do they want? What can I help them do in an hour? And really teach something, right? So You're going to need an audience. Once you have that audience signed up for your webinar, you're going to need to turn those registrants into attendees. And then once you have that, you're going to need to plan out your webinar, which we can talk about next, like exactly what to say. You can break it. What I like to do is to chunk it out, right? So you have different chunks of your webinar, like this time block, and this time block. And those are the things that you say and you go through on your webinar. You're
Well,
also going to need a strong follow-up sequence because, like I mentioned earlier, the people who don't come, right? Maybe it's because life gets in the way. Their cat threw up on the carpet, something, their kid, decided to color on the walls. And so any plans that they had, no matter how important, have just been usurped because something has happened. Life gets in
Alex,
the way.
you've been to my house, but
Yeah.
it's the dog is the one that's the trouble. But you're right, life gets in the way, right? So you need to follow up with people who, like I have to confess, I often sign up for a webinar for the replay because
Exactly.
I can't often get to the time, but I am interested in the subject. Otherwise, you just get spam. So you don't really want to register for webinars you're not interested in,
Right.
but you do want the replay.
Exactly. So you're going to need a good follow-up sequence is the last piece of that.
Okay, that's so. And don't worry, because we're going to include Alex's details at the show notes, right? And he's got an academy that you can join. It's called the Fearless Webinar Academy. So the goal of this interview really is for me and for you listening to get comfortable with the idea of webinars being part of your plan. I have procrastinated. I've done podcasts. I've done posts on LinkedIn and so on, but this avenue for marketing has been my bête noire. So don't worry about taking all notes. Listen, feel comfortable, and also know that Alex is there to guide us. Right, that's the key message from this session as well. So, Alex, how do we compete with everyone else that's got webinars? And if it's on LinkedIn or maybe it's on Facebook or Insta or TikTok, if wherever the audience is at the head end of that, what's your experience of what works in terms of the proposition? You talk about the offer, which is the product you're selling, but what about if you like, is it a short headline? Is it a nice graphic? Is it the person speaking on video? What gets people to pay attention to the fact you're doing a webinar in the first place?
Right. So how to get people to your webinar? Great
Yeah.
question. The answer is to have a compelling title. And in that title, you portray the title and I guess the subtitle, and then following that, the registration page, where you essentially outline what someone's going to learn. Now, Jim, I got a question for you. Have you ever, you've obviously been on webinars before, right?
I have.
Okay.
Absolutely.
How many webinars have you been on where instead of learning something, somebody just tried to sell you something for 30 minutes?
Too many.
Too many. Exactly. And most people have that experience as well. So what I'm telling you is this: the bar is so low because all you got to do is give people a quick win. Honestly, you just have to give people something. You have to teach people something. I say 3 things. So I outline 3 things that you cover on the webinar. And then at the end, you show them a logical step to solve the biggest problem. And that is essentially it. So when you do that, what happens in your audience's mind is they go, wow, I actually learned something, or I can actually implement something. And I don't have to pay for anything. So as a webinar host, your job should be, I'm going to teach as many people as possible this thing. I don't care if I make any money or not. The goal of the webinar should be, I want people to leave this webinar better than they came. And that should
And
be your goal. Money will be a byproduct of that thinking.
And Alex, I think that's really good that you said that, because earlier on in the conversation, you said a webinar is kind of a sales presentation. And I didn't stop you there, but I want to just raise that because a webinar structurally is just a live streaming with interactivity, right? The
Mm-hmm.
content is is not the definition of a webinar, right? It's just a practical implementation. And that you make a webinar educational and engaging and hopefully entertaining, right? If you can, that seems to be the real secret to success, where the audience is saying, I like that person, I trust that person, and I didn't have to turn off at 48 minutes when they say, and just for today, and if you only buy before the clock runs out, right? And maybe because I'm British, or maybe because I'm old and cynical, I just find the idea that someone tries to close me in like 5 minutes really irksome. In fact, it puts me off dealing with them, because I think, why would they be in such a hurry to sell me? If it's a really good product or service, they should be completely calm about the fact that I have time to evaluate, to check out, and to come back, which is where your email sequences come in, right? So I think if anyone's listening to this, I think if we, and is struggling with the idea of doing a webinar because you don't want to be hard sales, I think, Alex, it'd be fair to say we're both saying a webinar doesn't mean that you're trying to pressure people into buying something. You're leaving them in a better place. You're sharing, and you're very a smart idea. You're leaving them at least 3 things that they didn't know before.
Right. And you actually mentioned something there that I want to touch on. Let's bring like bringing it back to its roots. What is a webinar? Well, if we break down the word, it's a web seminar. On a web seminar, right? What is the goal of a seminar? That's a class you take in college. It's where you learn something, right? It's meant to be where you learn something. And so a lot of people have completely flip that on its head and just turn it into an hour-long, 30-minute long sales presentation for their company that nobody cares about. So, and that's why webinars get a bad rap.
Yeah, and Alex, I think that's fantastic. It's a web seminar. I hadn't connected with that, but you're absolutely right. And as you say, a seminar is fundamentally about learning. And if we're hosting a webinar, I think anyone that's on my show and listening to this show will not be a hardcore salesperson. They will be service oriented in the way they're trying to provide to their clients. So that idea that you're not trying to sell, but you're trying to serve, I think will change the mindset and make it feel like, oh, well, then why would I not do that? Right. So we've overcome some of the anxiety that it's just a hardcore sales and you need like a Glenn Ross, maybe a bit early for the movie, the hard sales, strategy. So it's not that. It's a place and a platform to share with more people than you could possibly do one-on-one with interactivity. So you've talked about those different structures. Now, you did also at one stage say to me that you've got what you call the money maths to make a 6-figure webinar. Having just said it doesn't have to be about selling, but let's face it, it is part of our marketing strategy. So, Alex, share with us this money math. You call it money math, the formula for financial success of a webinar.
Yeah. So the money math is going to be different for everybody. It depends on how much your offer is, right? That depends on what you're selling and how much it costs. But this is going to, hopefully in my upcoming book, I'm going to expand on this a little bit more. But the whole point of this is to get you excited. The whole point of me sharing this is to get you really, really excited about doing a webinar, because once you've done a couple, you'll have your statistics. You'll know what it takes. You'll have your numbers essentially. So let's just run through a scenario. This is the money math scenario, right? So let's say, Jim, you're selling a course for $500. Okay. And your goal is you want to sell $100,000 in a year. Okay. So to hit that, you're going to need 200 buyers. You're going to need 200 sales. Okay. And that is 16 per month. Okay. So we need to sell 16 course subscriptions per month, right? So to hit that, we need 34 attendees in our webinar if we have a 50% conversion rate. Okay. So if we have 50%, we need 34 people there in the room. 16 will buy our course. So to get 34 attendees in our webinar, we need 84 people to sign up. because we know we have a 40% show up rate. And to get 84 signups or registrants, right, we need 280 people to come to our registration page if we have a 30% opt-in rate. Okay. Now, the only way that you'll understand, okay, if I'm going to be successful, I need 280 people to come to my registration page, right? The only way you're going to know those numbers is after doing webinars for a couple months. That way you're going to understand, okay, let's take a look at the numbers. What happened on these webinars? Now I know my show up rate. I know my opt-in rate. I know my close rate. And so after you know your numbers, now you can predictably, you can predict what is going to happen on your webinar before you even do it.
Right. And for those people that lost track with the numbers and you move quickly through those, I think that there's a couple of things. One is that your ratio of how many people sign up to come will be unique to you. Probably there's some industry standards. The number of people that buy when they're in the room will also be up to you and the power of your offer, right, and your delivery. But those can be enhanced, right? I mean, the whole point is they're measurable and you can improve them. You can work on them, right, Alex? And that's part of it. And so what you do over time is what I used to call smart numbers. So I used to, when I ran my agency, we had a dashboard. We had real numbers and we had smart numbers. And the real numbers were cash flow, sales, revenue. And the smart numbers were indicators of future real numbers. So this many customers would bring, this much average order value, this many conversions, and so on, right? So those metrics you're talking about, would it be fair? Could I call those smart numbers as kind of?
Yeah, absolutely. But the whole point with looking at these numbers is to know what to work on. So, for example, the only way you're going to know what's not working on your webinar is to first do a webinar, because then you'll say, oh, okay, well, my sign up, it took 1,000 people for me to get 5 people to sign up. So right there, glaringly, is, well, my registration page needs work, right?
Okay.
So that's how you know what to work on, right?
Exactly.
If only 2 people bought and you had 1,000 people on your webinar, you know that you need to work on your pitch, or maybe the offer's not right for that audience, right? So doing these things, that's how you understand what you need to work on in your business.
And I think, Alex, what's great is that you're there with your experience at the Fearless Webinar Academy, because what I'm also hearing is that we've got to just sort of start cooking, right? And not worry about whether it's going to rise in the oven fully and taste great. We just have to start making webinars and refining them. So from a practical point of view, we have our offer. We've a good title, good headline. How would we write that? Is that something that we go to ChatGPT for? Is there a formula? Because for many of us, it's that blank page. From a practical point of view, is it, I will be on this day at this talking about these 3 things. Can you give us some guidance, Alex? What makes just like that original starting point?
Yeah. I'll answer your question by saying this. There's 2 reasons I can think of right now why someone is not doing a webinar. First reason is because they are scared to press the go live button, which is understandable. Public speaking it's probably, I think it's the number 1 phobia, and that's more than spiders, more than snakes, more than heights. Public speaking, right? People would rather be locked in a box with a spider or a snake than even think about doing a live webinar, which is understandable, because it's public speaking, even though you're in your pajamas in front of your computer. Still, nonetheless,
we're all afraid of the judgment, aren't we? That if we don't do a good job on stage, that what will happen socially, right? So it makes perfectly good sense.
Yeah,
but you're right. That's the first one.
And and the second reason why somebody doesn't want to do webinars, because there's a lot of work involved to set it up. That's a lot of unknowns with tech, right? And so what I set out to do is handle both of those things with Fearless Webinar Academy. First of all, it's free. Okay. Second of all, I have 15 ChatGPT prompts inside that will write everything for you, including the webinar script. And it's using my formula, which we can talk about right now.
Yeah,
But it's using
absolutely.
my formula for the script. So this thing, it writes the title, helps you discover your audience so you can advertise correctly, um, helps you write the registration page, in both email sequences, everything you need, everything. And so I wanted to solve that problem, the tech setup. All the copy you're going to need is done for you, at least to start.
That's
And then
fantastic, Alex.
coaching is what I do. So if you need help and you want to practice, and maybe the first time you press the go live button, maybe you don't want that to be the first time you're saying these words,
Yeah, you can
which is
you could
understandable.
rehearse though, right? I mean, you can always
Yeah.
record yourself using Loom, for example, or
Hmm.
Descript and play it back, just like you would if you do have a speech. You do it in front of the mirror first, right?
Yeah. Exactly. So to answer your question, I absolutely want you, if you're doing a webinar, let's say you're doing it, you're going to do a webinar. I'd say, Jim, write everything that you're going to say. Write down every single word that you're going to say and read it like 5 times. And then turn your camera on and do it again. Okay. After that, now that's 6 times that you've gone through this word progression. Okay. So now that after you've created your slides, okay, you're going to put little cues on there, right, to remind you about that, that part of the webinar that you were going to be talking about. So um, it's very important. What I'm saying is this: it's very important to practice.
Yeah, and I think also what's also important about the fact that there's practice involved is that each time you repeat yourself, you get better and better.
Yep.
And I work with some people who have such high expectations about how good they're going to be first time. And you say, well, actually, everybody, regardless of whether they're presidents or CEOs, they've had to learn. And I've coached CEOs of companies like Philips, Nortel, AT&T as a media trainer, and they've all had to learn the skills, right? All of us have to practice and revisit the same sentences and say them in a different way to get the flow, right? So, Alex, that's wonderful. So, we've understood that there's a role for webinars, that we can place them and promote them on our various platforms, whether it's on LinkedIn or on YouTube or on TikTok, wherever we can promote them to our platforms. You've got the money maths, which helps us to work out how, if you like, how many people we should be promoting this to. I did want to ask you about the frequency of communication because you talked about like 6 emails and 3 SMSs. How frequently and over what period of time should people be corresponding? That's the first question I want to ask, and then I've got a second follow-up question. So, is it that you write to people all within 3 days, or is it over a week? What's the sort of timeline people should think about?
Yeah, 1 week. Um, if you, it's a good question. It's a really good question, Jim, because if you start promoting your webinar too early, people are going to forget that they even registered for the darn thing, right?
Yeah.
So, but if you don't have enough time, you're not going to have enough people sign up. So 1 week is what I found is perfect amount of time to promote it, and I would send an email every single day.
Okay, that
I would,
much frequency. And
yeah,
you can use some tools like Webinar Jam, presumably has got some of this. And I'm on the Kajabi platform, and that has a really nice form plus email sequence. And I know HubSpot and Zoho, they all have these sequencing. So you can automate that basically, Alex, can't you? You don't have to be trying to manually send out every day.
yeah, that's correct. Basically, any software, any webinar software nowadays is going to allow you to send what's called an email sequence. And so basically what that means is you you write the emails out, copy and paste them in, send this day 1, send this day 2, send this day 3, send this one an hour before, send this one right at the time, right? So you have everything written out, but you press go. Because here's the thing, Jim, sometimes in your life stuff comes up, right? Sometimes sometimes my kids
Yeah.
get a call on and I don't have time to send out an email, right? So the beauty with an email sequence is it's just scheduled.
Okay. And then, so my second question was about how often one should do a webinar.
Yeah, great question. So I wouldn't do more than 2 webinars a month. I would say 1 webinar a month, 12 a year. If you can do that, that would be ideal. You don't
Oh,
want to do
okay.
them too many times because familiarity breeds contempt, right? People don't after you do them, oh, it's just Alex is doing another webinar this week. Weren't you just doing one last week? So yeah, that's what I recommend once a month. And this is a little bit more advanced, but you can switch it up. You don't have to do the same webinar every single time, right? You can do more than one webinar, right? You can teach more than one thing.
Yeah, and then also you can have the webinar play on repeat, can't you, Alex? So you can record it once, but it becomes evergreen, right? It becomes something that's scheduled and plays without you. So I think, Alex, I think what's really coming across to me is that the webinar is, I feel like, less foreboding than I thought. That there's a process, and that we can lean on the technology a lot, and also lean on you and your expertise as well. Alex, if there was a number one tip that you would give to anyone thinking about webinars, what would that be?
Number one tip is, well, just like you said, it's more people care more about authenticity than they do about you being polished. People could care less about your slide deck looking cool. People could care less about all of the crap that you're worried about. What people actually care about is to meet you, to that you are authentic, that you're not a liar, that you're authentic, that you're honest, and people care that you show your human side. And that's what makes webinars great because you could do all of those things.
And in a way, because you're live,
Right.
by definition, you're going to be doing those things, right? So making mistakes, like pronounce your surname incorrectly, whatever. It's all in there. It's all in the wash. It's like live TV.
Mm-hmm.
Alex, you're plainly someone who listens, learns, reads a lot. Can you recommend a book or a podcast that would help people or that you found inspirational yourself?
Yeah. I got a bunch of books behind me, but I'll start off with this. I just started my own podcast, so it's called The Vault of Results. I recommend that podcast. Um,
That's good.
but
The Vault, is that the Vault, VOLT, or the Vault as in VAULT?
VAULT, The
Okay,
Vault
the Vault.
of
Okay, yeah,
Results. Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Nice.
I want to basically, Jim, I want to be like you one day. I want to
Oh,
have, hundreds of podcast guests under my belt and just, meet the most amazing people. And that's why I want to start a podcast in the first place. And then as far as books go, there's a brand new book that just came out, I think in 2024, called $1 Million Weekend by Noah Kagan. Incredible book. You will not be able to put that book down. It's basically how to take an idea and turn it into a business without without all the BS. So great book. And then also another book called Building Your Story Brand by Donald Miller. Incredible book. It talks about, I will say this as a warning, it will ruin every single movie for the rest of your life because you'll just understand how the story happens and it'll ruin every movie. So
yeah.
that's my word.
Well, yeah. So I think we'll stick with the $1 Million over the weekend
Yeah.
and then watch movies without knowing how they're built. Otherwise, get the best of both worlds. Alex Veng, if we want to find out more about you at the Fearless Webinar Academy, how can they do that?
Yeah, I made it super easy. It's fearlesswebinaracademy.com. So that's where you can go and get and join my free program. It's totally free. All my prompts are free. I believe in unfunneling my business. I don't have a funnel. You just come to my website, join the academy for free. All the prompts are made available to you immediately. And if you want coaching, cool. And if you don't need that, that's fine too. I'm just here to help. I want people to unlock a brand new webinar. Sorry. I want people to unlock a brand new revenue stream for their businesses. And if I can help them do that, great. And right, as I said earlier, money is just a byproduct of helping people.
Alex, that really comes across. Well, anyone that joins, they'll find me there because I'm definitely signing up because I need to get webinars going. And you've really helped to demystify that and make it seem, yeah, much more approachable, much more possible. So, Alex, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you very much, Jim, for having me. And again, I meant every word. Hopefully, one day I'll be just like you, and I'll have an incredible network of amazing people that I get to interview on my podcast.
Well, you're too kind, Alex. I mean, hopefully you'd never look and feel as old and tired as I do. I think I'm sure you'll age better and you'll do a much better job than me on the podcast. But I thank you very much for the kind words. And so you've been joining me, the slightly older version of the aspiring entrepreneur, Jim James. And I really, really meant it at the beginning. I have personally been struggling with webinars, which is why I haven't done any, but I am going to start. And I promise that I will be doing some. In fact, I'm doing one in July for a group in Singapore and Indonesia. But I plan on getting out in April, if I can, really, to do webinars. And so you can join me as I learn how to do that. And let's get some for you, and let's work on a 6-figure webinar. So thank you for joining me, Jim James, on the Unnoticed Entrepreneur this week. And until we meet again, I just encourage you to keep on communicating.